And still talking floods now, we bring in a renowned climate change expert, Commodore Akugbe Iyamu. Good morning and thanks for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
Good morning. How are you?
We're very well here. Samuel Mashe, Michael Koche, and I will be talking with you about this crucial subject of floods. So we see year in, year out, warnings by NIMET and other agencies, alerting the nation to impending floods. Yet we see floods as the order of the day. What's your initial remarks about this phenomenon that we usually see here in Nigeria?
Yeah, thank you for having me. First of all, we have to understand what flooding is. Flooding is progressive water over several days, short and intense rainfall over a short period of time, or the melting ice due to blockage of trenches and all. So what is important is it has overflown, it bounced and gone to places that know no flood before. The World Meteorological Organization identified 4 key areas this year, which is carbon emission, drought, food security, and flooding. So we are going to be interested in flooding. Now, since 1980, you find out that flooding have taken almost 250,000 people's lives and have damaged almost $1 trillion worth of properties. In 2017, the World Meteorological Index classified Nigeria as the 10th most vulnerable to climate change in the world. So you can imagine where we're coming from. And going from that, climate change has become very, very persistent, carbon emission. So you find out that there's a direct correlation between high temperature and the amount of water that is going to be held. If you look at it, 1 degree rise in temperature is going to hold 7% amount of water. That increases the flooding. Then the World Weather Attribution also says that climate change, although there will be flooding, but climate change has increased doubly the amount of water that will be poured in a particular season due to climate change.
All right, Commodore, the issue of climate change has been with us over a decade. The realities of it have been with us more than a decade. And we have been discussing this not just in Nigeria, not just Africa, but around the world. And we've seen flooding year after year, even after warnings like this. How helpless are we as a nation and as a people when we have this warning signs at the beginning of every year, yet we watch and see these things happen without doing anything about it? How helpless are we about these?
Yeah, we are not helpless. We are not helpless. A lot is being done about climate change. At least we have moved from 47% to 45% in our national determined contribution to climate change. The climate change is a global problem. If you take it further, check the case of South Africa, what they just had the other time. The rain that was supposed to fall for 1 year fell in 48 hours. So you had 400 people that were dead, 12,000 houses damaged, and almost a lot of people 40,000 people being displaced. So it's a global phenomenon which we must all come together to solve. We all have individual responsibility. Our carbon footprint need to be checked. Deforestation, we have to take care of that. Coal, that is, we have to take care of that. Fossil fuel, we have to take care of that. And everything that brings carbon emission into the atmosphere. The problem of climate change is carbon emission, and that is what we have to deal with.
Now, some of these things are actually climate change and all of that, but to what extent is this attributable to bad governance? Because there are some states that construct roads without enough drainages. We don't see enough coordination between state and state in trying to make sure that they find the water level. And please talk to that possibility.
Thank you very much. See, it has nothing to do with, it has to do with preparation. All of us being prepared. Today, I was just reading it. If you see the Pacific Ocean now, they are declaring climate emergency. Everybody needs to come on board. We need to come on the table to deal with climate change. It is not an inverted proportion of blame to somebody. Our mind machine need to churn out solution, because if we keep passing blame here, passing blame there, we will never solve the problem. Me, you, all of us, the clothes we are wearing, the water we are drinking, everything we are doing is contributing to this impact of climate change and devastating flooding. So we have to have a conversation around climate change. All of us. It's a whole of nation approach.
Right, and talking about everyone being coordinated, there are still, some measure of dissatisfaction. According to NIMET still, it says the number of states have not even aligned with the flood warnings and all that had been dished out from the national level, which all states across the Federation should align with. That on the hand. And then when you now look at, individual decisions that we take, all of this, kind of contributes to the situation we find ourselves in. And then how then do we combat floods with these behaviors that we see here and there? What's your take on that?
You see, flood does not define territories. We have 323 dams in the Sahel part, both big, small, and all. When flooding comes, it doesn't have a boundary. There is no way of saying this one didn't do enough, this one didn't do enough, this one didn't do enough. No, it is a joint effort. We have to start talking about it. We have to start talking about it. There have to be a conversation around our policy, a sovereign policy on flooding. I don't want us to take it to the level of blames. No, we must deal with it. If flooding is coming to, say, Nigeria now, it's not going to say it's coming to Lagos, it's coming to wherever. No, everybody must be on board. We must orchestrate the conversation on climate change. We must not behave like the orchestral leader and start blaming somebody else and backing the real problem. No, we must face the real problem, because it is socioeconomic, is going to affect life, it's going to affect food security, it's going to affect environmental security, it's going to affect all forms of security, at the end of the day, national security. So all of us are involved. There's no compartment in solving the problem of flooding. It's a whole of nation approach, like I said before.
All right, talking about the approach to this, where do we start from? Because it seems like if you're seeing it from here, there's a problem. If you're seeing it from there, there's a problem. As much as there is problem, there's also possibilities or potential solutions here and there. But where do we start from in our quest to trying to put this behind us and get things right?
Plant more trees. Plant more trees. Plant trees, plant trees, plant trees. And you see, flooding is human induced, and is sustained by human activities. What do we do? Our forests, they are going. Our forests, they are going. When we were growing up, when you cut a tree, you plant 5. Now, we will need to develop, but we must also take care of the environmental aspect. That is tree planting. We must be involved. It must be our culture. It must be our day-to-day life to plant trees. And we must begin to recycle, reuse, and reduce. What we are taking from nature, it's what is aggravating the carbon emission into the air. That is why for 1 degree temperature rise, you're going to have 7% of water going into the atmosphere. Take for example, now, let's see how devastating it is. You see, Mesa rain in India this year experienced the higher level of rainfall, 49.5 inches. which was related to the temperature of 40 degrees. The same way with the United Kingdom. You see everybody in Greece and everybody, we're all leaving their houses. So it is a problem. It is tree planting. We must plant trees. We must plant trees, and we must plant trees.
Well, you're talking about trees, but it's not only about trees. It's about seawalls, it's about levees, it's about dams, it's about all of that. Do we have a concept in this country of flood? Do we have a concept of flood infrastructure where we will know that this is how we tackle floods when they happen? In the US, for instance, when I was living there, you will see a flood. The flood will come in, and before a few hours, the water has found its level, as they say. But we can see that this is, for most part, happening in Lagos. But for much of the country, this is not the case. Do we have any concept of flood infrastructure in Nigeria?
Yes, very, 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 very strong one. Very, very strong one. In your preview leading to this interview, you read it out. The NIMET and all, they are all giving, they are all advising people to stay out of harm's way. There's a policy to that, but it is very difficult now. The water coming from ice melting and all, so difficult to take it out. That is where you need, the world is looking at it differently now. You need massive investment in that area. You need infrastructure like levees, dikes, and embankment, and shore protection to be able to protect it. But that is still not enough. There is no, if you prepare this year, due to climate change has the possibility of making the flooding worse every year. If you prepare this year, next year is going to make nonsense of whatever you have done this year. So if we don't solve the climate change problem, we are never going to get the flooding right. Because the amount of water that is pouring is going to be on continuous increase.
All right. Still talking about, combating floods. Now bring us to the issue which you've already hinted at in your earlier remarks, the issue of, what we as individuals can do, as a first step. You've also, solicited for more tree planting activities and all that. But looking at harsh individual approaches and all that, what would you be advocating for? Of course, the issue of open defecation, indiscriminate waste disposal, we're still living with these sad realities that also contribute to the climate disasters we see now.
Yes, open defecation and waste management. I have two good books on that. You see, open defecation is cultural. It has to do with poverty. It has to do with lack of awareness. It has to do with a whole lot of things that tie you down to the lower ring. We have to show up awareness. We have to show up awareness to be able to stamp out open defecation. The question is, people believe that if they defecate openly, they are communicating with their gods. Anything that is tied with culture, it is very, very difficult to.
Is there really anything to that, or is it just a milder way of putting it?
No, it's a cultural belief. It's a cultural belief. So open defecation has been with mankind since the first century, and it has remained there. What is sustaining it? What is sustaining anything that is linked to culture? It is very, very difficult to unbundle. Well, on the other side, you look for the waste management. Now, for waste management, if the danger of the head does not scare you, let the economic aspect encourage you. For waste management now, Nigeria generates 42 million tons of waste, while the sub-Saharan Africa generates 60 million tons of waste. You find out that we are generating more than half, but there's a lot of weight in it. If you look at 100 tons of that, you are going to generate 1 kilowatt of electricity. And if you share 1,000 tons of it, you are going to generate 5 jobs. So waste is not waste anymore. It is wealth. That is where nations are now looking at. Nobody is going to, if you are going to wait for ministry, department, and agencies to generate thousands of jobs anymore, it's not going to come. It is these intangibles now. These intangibles, that is where the survival of sovereignties are now.
All right, Commodore, you talked about the need to plant trees earlier on, we're bearing in mind a population that is increasing by the day, and with the population increase, there's more expansion, there is more need for food, there's more need for cultivation, and above all, there's more need for infrastructure. And most of the infrastructure we have, are even falling down forests, depleting the forests that we have and all the vegetation. How do we reconcile the need to develop and then also the need to plant more trees?
Like I said before, I said we should not be like the orchestra leader who back reality and just faces his own word. While we are doing that, we must also look at it that we need to survive. We need to survive. See, if you look at the sheep now, if a very big sheep generates almost the amount of carbon that 50 million cars will be able to generate. Then if you have 15 of those sheep, they are going to generate the amount of cars in the car park of the whole world, which is 750 million. In the world now, we have about 300 trillion trees, and they take away 600 gigatons of carbon away from the atmosphere. So that is still our solution. In as much as we are developing, we have to strike the balance. We have to strike the balance. We have to respect the green areas. The green area. We have to respect the leaf line. We have to, you see, trees bring beauty. They bring beauty to an environment. If now you just go out of your house, go into the trees, you will see the amount of air you will be getting. Look, let the trees encourage us to be able to do that. Development is good, but we also have to take care of our survival.
Yeah, it's very interesting you talked about communication with the gods. Maybe that is what people should be saying now. I remember too that some parts of the riverine areas, they say that men have the best chatter when they are, as it were, communicating with the gods. They gather together and do it at the same time.
In a communal...
So it's a kind of communicating with God and communicating with men at the same time. Fellow men at the same time. They have the best chatter. But that brings us to the issue of flood control literacy. How do we get to that point? Because you see that there are all kinds of movements around the world, all kinds of, what I call it, conscientization around the world, where people are now being told that do not throw plastics in the water, do not throw paper here, do not bring your Coke and throw it out the window. There's a place in Colorado where they said that if you throw anything, any litter out of the window is $1,000 fine. It is one thing to find people, it's another thing to have that idea, that consciousness that anything you toss aside is actually an encouragement to flooding. How far have we gone? And how can we cross the cultural barrier? Because it's also a cultural thing, as you said. Where we try to rarefied it, to make it sublime, to become dirty in our society by saying that you are communicating with the gods. Things like that. How do we move from a cultural surrender to an actual state of cultural awakening?
Thank you very much. I like that word, cultural surrender. You see, we have not culturally surrendered. The whole thing is that we still have a choice in the whole conundrum. There's still a very big choice. You see, like I said, our mind machine needs to be working now. For us to clear the plastic, we need to bring to the table the off-takers. The off-takers. Now, we need to encourage people to say that, look, if you gather this amount of plastic, we will pay it. We will pay for it. Now, the the recycling now, that is the garden of plastic, is still at the informal sector. Why don't we bring it in? It's now left for us to bring it now and make it a very good job. You see, for riches in the rubbish, you will find out that let us escalate it to such a way that you will be proud of the job that you are doing. Plastics are becoming a very big threat to the blue economy. You are now having fishes coming out from the ocean, coming out with plastic. Plastic chips are getting into the body of the fish. And that is a very big threat to the, the blue economy is a substantial part of the world economy. Now we also have to encourage the off-takers, like the supermarkets and all, have to be brought in. They have to be incentive. Most of the time, laws does not work alone. You need incentives to work around that law. We have to make it in such a way that, like you said, in abroad, when you bring a green bag, there's incentive for it. All those ones are reducing the amount of recklessness to the earth resources and encouraging reduce, and recycle. That brings us to the circular economy. Nobody is dealing with linear economy anymore. We are now much more involved in the circular economy. You take, you make, you reduce, you recycle, you resell, and so it goes round and round and round. If we encourage the circular economy, we will be dealing with the problem of climate change, we'll be dealing with the problem of environmental degradation, and we'll be dealing with our economy. Our economy is very, very important. Waste management is the right direction to go now.
All right, Air Commodore Akugbe Iyamu, we say a big thank you to you for speaking with us on TVC Breakfast. Many thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I liked the part where you said, cultural reawakening, and essentially that is what we need, not just on the part of the people, but on the part of the government. Everyone really needs to be more responsible and conscious about the evils of that we do, because he was speaking about the blue economy being threatened there. When you see fish, and fish has even become so expensive at this time, so it's bad enough that you have to pay more for your fish, and then having to see plastics, which invariably will endanger the health of humans.
There was one time when Chief Hope Harriman, in those days, he was saying that when he was growing up around the Warrior Fun area, they used to take back. His mother used to sell, what they call it, crayfish and all of that, and they would just go to the water side, and they just scoop the fish, the crayfish,
Wow.
and then they do it, and then go across to Onitsha and go and sell, and so on. And Udoha told me, former governor Udoha used to say, he said one time when he was governor, when he was a child, his grandmother would send him to the water side. Say, okay, it's time to cook. Go and bring fish. All he needed to do was go to the river and dip his hand in the water, pick a fish, and bring it.
Fish was that surplus.
Wow.
It was surplus everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yes.
Wow, that's amazing.
And here
but
in
that's
Lagos,
long gone now.
That's
long
here
gone.
in Lagos,
That is what we do to the environment.
Right,
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
And here in Lagos, of course, we also have an affinity with the seas too, but I think it's more of fun, combating the evils that people pray that they don't see the rage of Mother Nature, because back then in those days, the bar beach, where that's what
That's one thing Lagos has done. And when we're talking of what government can do, what Lagos did to Papish, you see, those people, many millennials now, they don't know what is going on, but that place was gone. All the buildings around the bar beach were about to disappear, and so on. And Lagos did a good job of even turning
the whole place around
into another city,
exactly.
which is extraordinary.
And it's a good thing. The new city they're talking about around there now is taking cognizance of all these environmental indicators and so on.
Absolutely. All right. I will wait and pray and